Welcome to the Compendium podcast hosted by Leadership Books. In just moments, our host Michelle Smith will be joining us with a very special guest. Before we get started, I would like to introduce you to Michelle. She's an award-winning marketing professional with years of experience in diverse markets. She is a 4-time published author and is also a seasoned publicist and national speaker. Michelle has appeared on Rachel Ray, ABC, CBS, CNN, Fox National News, Success Magazine, and many national radio programs. And she specializes in helping authors and business owners achieve publishing success. Won't you please welcome Michelle Smith?
Hello, welcome to the Compendium podcast. I'm Michelle Smith, your host, and I'm very excited to have Tracey Lawrence here with me this morning. She's the owner of Grand Family Planning LLC and the author of Dementia Sucks, and Dementia does suck. So welcome, Tracey. I want to hear all about your story and your book, and thanks for spending time with us here today.
Oh, my pleasure, Michelle. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So tell us about the book. What inspired you to write the book? I know you had family members from what I've read, but please tell us your story about it, because I think that's so important, because this is such a hard thing for families to go through in general. So I want to hear your perspective, and the cover's awesome, by the way, too. I can't
Thank you.
Marketing.
Thanks. I can't take the credit for the cover. The publisher actually designed it. And when I saw it, I said, oh my God, they read the book.
It's fun. Yeah, I think it definitely plays. The graphics play with the overall humor theme. But tell us your story. I want to hear what inspired you to write this, and go for it.
Yes. So, well, when I was when I first figured out that my dad was sick, I was living with my husband in northern New Jersey, and my parents were living in South Florida, and I was a graphic artist, and my dad wasn't just my father, he was my friend. I adored my dad. He was a very funny guy. He was very sharp, very quick. And when I realized that he was having issues, I went down to Florida to visit him. We had a little family vacation in March of 2003. And I would talk to my dad on the phone regularly, and he always seemed really well, and he put a really happy face on everything. But then when I saw how he was actually doing, I was rather alarmed. He didn't look right. He was moving very slowly. He was clearly in pain, and there were some things going on. And he was going for tests. He was trying to figure out what was wrong. At that point in time, he was 75 years old, and he had not lived the healthiest life in the world.
Okay.
He was a smoker until he was 56 years old.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Big time smoker. I mean, down to the filter and on to the next one kind of smoker. He was not a fitness nut by any stretch of the imagination. He ate whatever he felt like eating. So, he had some lifestyle issues. He had pulmonary fibrosis, which was diagnosed with a surgical procedure called an open lung biopsy.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Yeah. And what we didn't know, after he had the biopsy, they didn't close him up all the way. And so he was bleeding internally.
Oh, wow. And
so he wasn't feeling well. I was talking to him on a Sunday evening. We had returned from Florida, and I was concerned, and I was talking to my dad, and he said he wasn't feeling well. And I said, do me a favor, please. Call 911, go to the hospital, don't jerk around. Let's, make sure that you see a doctor. Well, he promised me that he would. And that the following morning, I called the apartment, and there was no answer. So I said, okay, let's try Memorial Regional. And they said, yeah, he is here. Okay. Called my brother. We flew down and went straight to the hospital. My father was pleasantly surprised to see us enter his hospital room. And he said, how did you know I was here? And I said, well, I'm a genius, Dad. I figured it out. And he said, and I said, so how are you feeling? And he said, what do you mean? I said, you're in the hospital because you're sick? I'm in the hospital? I'm sick? So that was my introduction to dementia.
Wow.
and I had no idea what it was. I didn't know if my father's situation was temporary or permanent. And it turned out that it was permanent. His short-term memory evaporated.
Oh, wow.
He could not remember something that would happen to him. The next minute, it would just completely disappear. So my mom was not coping real well because my dad is kind of her whole world.
Mm-hmm.
So we decided to bring my parents north to New Jersey to come stay with me. And I don't have kids, and I have a schedule of my choosing at this point, because I'm a graphic artist, and I work from my home. I live in large, and I could do that. So that began my journey with my dad. And as it turned out, his doctor was unfortunately quite correct that there were a lot of things wrong with him. He had many cross-complicating illnesses, the worst of which was vascular dementia, which nobody could seem to diagnose properly.
I haven't heard of that. Wow.
Yeah, and it makes sense when you know my dad's history. He had a coronary artery blockages. And when he was 56, 2 bypasses done. So he had coronary artery disease, which meant he was prone to having his arteries, his plumbing would get clogged.
Mm-hmm.
So what vascular dementia is small strokes that occur in the brain, and they happen randomly. So it made sense in the context of the things that were happening to my dad, where his symptoms would change, like just really suddenly. Suddenly his speech would get slurred, and then a little later it would clear up, and then some other symptom would occur. The worst thing, though, was he was hallucinating constantly.
Mm-hmm.
It was like he was dreaming while he was awake.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And he was having a difficult time figuring out what was being created by his mind and what was in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it was exhausting for him because he could never, let down his guard. So, and at that point in time, I was able to ascertain what my parents had done as far as their estate planning went. Mm-hmm. So I was able to find out that they had wills, that they had power of attorneys, and that I was appointed. So that was good news. Mm-hmm. I was their healthcare proxy as well. They also had long-term care insurance, and I learned what that meant and how to use it. So that was good. Mm-hmm. But it was horrible and shocking to see what was going on with my dad. And because it came on so quickly, at least to me, because I wasn't seeing him every day. And he had a really great methodology for for making me think everything was okay. And frankly, I was partially complicit. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to think that there was anything wrong with my dad. I didn't want to believe that my dad was getting sick. My parents were having a good time in Florida, and I was happy for them.
Exactly.
So, until I was confronted with my dad being in front of me and seeing what was going on, I didn't know. But that just opened up the doors. And what was clear, my father was very clear that he did not want to live the way he was. Mm-hmm. He was no longer the person he enjoyed being. Mm-hmm. And so he did not want us to do anything to keep him alive any longer than he had to be. And we allowed him to pass without, seriously intervening, because he was just so unhappy. And it was a very tough thing to come to grips with. Mm-hmm. But, I feel very good that I was able to help my father to have as good a death as he could have had.
Well, I think that just speaks to your quality and your love as a daughter, because my grandmother had dementia and Alzheimer, and it's heartbreaking. But we're going to take a quick break with the message from Leadership Books. And we're going to get back, because I want to talk about some of the humor, because that's one thing about your book. We'll take a quick break and be right back.
The problem with most online bookstores is that, as an author, you have no connection to your readers. You have no idea if your grandmother, competitor, or that perfect client bought your book. If this wasn't bad enough, you're not privy to the purchase record of those buyers in order to sell them another book, or service, or consultation. The book retailer kept your sales data as their proprietary information, and you're the big loser. Now, to add insult to injury, because you have no connection to your book buyer, there's virtually zero chance that you'll connect to make them a client, hire you as a speaker, or attend your online course, a mastermind group, or privately consult with you. It's a model that has failed you time and time again. However, with Leadership Books, you'll always have access to your customers. We at Leadership Books would be honored to list your book alongside some of the most prestigious authors of our time. Would you like to join us? Just click the link below to get started.
Welcome back. We're here with Tracey Lawrence, and she's the author of Dementia Sucks. And one of the points of her book was dealing with a very tough situation with humor. So I was hoping you can speak to the listeners about that, because that's kind of what helped me going through my own experience.
Sure. Well, I wrote the book as a coping mechanism. When I started writing it, it was just so I wouldn't punch my mom. She was the same person who drove me nuts as a teenager, only more so.
Well, denial, and that's it's a tough situation, but yeah, I completely.
Yeah. And when I was a kid, I could run up into my room, slam the door, blast the stereo, and not worry. But
not now.
Now I've got a crazy woman living in my house. She could burn the house down. So I couldn't just run away. So one of the things that I would do was write. And I blogged, and I put it out there because I wanted people to be able to learn from what I was going through. Because that's my instinct. And my parents were funny people. Our family culture is like, if there was something going on that was difficult, you tried to find the humor in it. You find reasons to laugh. And so that was a big part of the way I dealt with both of my parents, because we always looked for reasons to have a laugh together, not at each other's expense, but where everybody's in on the joke. And my mother, once my father had passed away, I think there were times when my mother was actually channeling my father, which was really interesting, as my father was like the big personality and she was his wife. Yeah. But there were times when there were like elements of my father's humor that would just like come screaming out of her, and she was very funny. So, there were times when she just made the whole situation funny because she was funny. And I noticed that a lot of times I would talk to people about my mother's situation, and and I would make them laugh because the situation was so bizarre and absurd, and then they'd apologize. Mm-hmm. Like, this is a serious situation, and if I laugh, I'm a bad person. It's like, no, you gotta laugh at this stuff, or you're gonna cry. What would you rather do? I mean, yeah, okay, I'm one who, like, I can go for a good cry occasionally. Yeah, it's a good thing. But you've got to try to find the humor in this stuff. And the little victories, when my mother was losing her language and she would use the wrong word for something, I could kind of like connect the dots. Like one time she was in the hospital and I'm helping her eat. And the food had cooled off. So when I gave her a little more, she went breezy, so that wasn't the right word, but I knew what she meant, so it's like, it's always like kind of a victory when you kind of, it's like, oh, this is what she means, so, and that's really a big part of it. You have to learn to adapt to a new way of interacting with your loved ones. Mm-hmm. Yes, there will be times when you're going to be thrown back in time to where, a previous life, because you've had a relationship with them for a long time, but you also have to be willing to create a new relationship. And a lot of people will say, "Oh, well, it's just like, like it's role reversal. You're the parent now." It's like, no, it's really not that simple, because these are people with histories. These are people who have been competent and have lived their lives with success and their own skill sets.
Mm-hmm.
And your relationship as their child, while it's changing, it doesn't really just go away.
Mm-hmm.
They don't become infants and you become a parent. That's not how it works. So, it's really like, it's learning to cultivate a new relationship where you're still their child, but you're taking on more of the parental roles. So it's a really different way of being. And I also noticed that a lot of people, they get really frustrated with their loved one because they forget important facts. Like, my mother's husband, my father, died before her. And then she would start talking about him present tense, and that she just saw him, or where is he, or asking questions about him as if he's still alive. Now, when people are confronted with that situation, very often they'll try to correct the person. And what I always like to say is, don't correct, redirect. Find a new way of conducting the conversation. You don't want to be that person who keeps telling this other person, "No, don't you remember, Daddy's dead?"
No.
There are people who do that. And and they get frustrated and they take it out on this person. No. What you really should be doing is kind of taking the conversation in a different direction. "Is your father downstairs in the car?" No, Mom, he's not. What, did you want to go someplace?" "Yeah, I'm getting hungry." "Okay, well, let's go in the kitchen and let's go see what's in the refrigerator. Or would you like, maybe I can order you something." So you change the conversation.
I'm having trouble hearing you.
Sorry, that's my watch. Siri wanted to get involved.
I'm here too. That's fine.
Sorry, Siri, you can't have a sandwich. So, but it's finding out why they're asking the question,
Mm-hmm.
and then responding to it in a way that doesn't, get all.
Is there some?
Will you stop? Get all, you don't want to get all gloomy on them, you don't, because the thing that people need to understand about dementia is that the part of the brain that processes emotion stays with them the longest.
Mm-hmm.
So while they may not be able to remember what they had for lunch, giving them a hug and the good feeling that comes from that contact will stay with them for a long time, even for hours, sometimes days after you see them. They may not remember why they feel better, but they do feel better.
Hi, I'm Ron from Leadership Books. Leadership Books is a premier book retailer and news source specializing in nonfiction books. Books that help its readers change their lives, business, community, and family. Our authors are some of the finest thought leaders in the world of business, finance, and faith. Take a few moments and check out our authors, and I'll give you $10 off your first order.
Tracey, I think that's wonderful, and I think your book's going to help so many families that are dealing with this, because it's beyond tough. And thank you for sharing like your insight and your stories as well. I mean, I can't imagine, like, my parents. I'm keeping an eye on them, but I know Alzheimer's, dementia runs in my side of the family. So I just just have to wait and watch. But where can you tell our listeners where they can purchase your book? And do you have speaking engagements on the agenda? What's next for Tracey Lawrence?
Yes. Well, my book is available in the Leadership Bookstore. Just look for Dementia Sucks. And if you want more information about the book, it has a website, dementiasucks.com, so that's easy. And all the ways of purchasing the book are actually on that site. So so people are welcome to visit there. As far as speaking gigs go, I actually am speaking at a conference coming up next month. It's actually the day before Thanksgiving. And I will be talking to business people about caring for their loved ones and what to look for and how to have more productive conversations, because I want people to have conversations with their parents before dementia takes hold of them, because it's a lot easier to create these support systems when their loved ones are still able to interact and to contribute and be engaged with you, so that you can learn what they've done, what you need to do, and so that you can work together as a team to make sure that as your loved one ages and becomes less capable, you will be empowered to be able to honor their wishes and do what they would have wanted if they could tell you.
Tracey, thank you so much for your time today. This has just been absolutely amazing, and I could speak with you for like another hour about this. So please visit her website, keep an eye on what Tracey has going next, and visit the Leadership Bookstore to search for her book. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Michelle. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for joining us for today's broadcast. I do hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And be sure to visit us online at leadershipbooks.store. There you'll find the works of some of the finest thought leaders today. And be sure to tune in here each week to gain even deeper insights from one of those leaders on the Compendium podcast.